Westeros.
And welcome to our Morning Throners podcast.
I'm Nelson.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Kyle.
And we are your Morning Throners. And welcome back to another episode of your favorite Song of Ice and Fire podcast. We are your Morning Throners with Jamie One on deck. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Pretty good. I feel a little validated in this one.
All right.
I mean, I don't know that he was 100%. I'm going to jump right into it, I guess. I don't know that he was 100% silent just because he was like trying to keep a secret, but I feel like that was part of it.
I don't even know what you're talking about. What did you predict that you were right about?
Well, I was like trying to say, you're like, Jamie doesn't need to lie low. I feel like Jeff and I kind of had this argument in the Cersei chapter or whatever.
Oh, that's fair. We did talk a lot
that was kind of why he was being stoic and standing there, right? Like he definitely feels 100% guilty for this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was 100% hiding that he knew is why he was being quiet, but that was definitely in there, right? Like he didn't want to say too much.
Yeah, he's definitely throwing some red herrings at other people too, like trying to accuse some cats.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Is there's some stuff we learned in this one that we haven't heard in the Cersei one, that Jamie has been playing the part of investigator, even though he like knows a lot of what's going on.
I mean, we kind of knew that, right? Like he was sent down first and everything. Before we get too far into that, when did this this was after the Cersei chapter? Was this some of this was in the Cersei chapter, right? Like when him and her and Tom
I do have a
were
timeline question too.
I don't think any of this was a crossover.
Okay. Is this the second day at the Sept? Another day?
So at the end, Cersei says that Jamie had said he was going to stand vigil for 7 days.
So is this a week later? Is this the last day?
Well, no, because Cersei basically says there's at least... Tommen says, I'll do better tomorrow. Because again, I was thinking the same thing. So I was looking out for clues the whole way. Tommen says, I'll do better tomorrow, which tells me this is at latest day 6. And again, Cersei said go back in. And Jamie seems to be calling an end to it. Again, jumping ahead. Sorry, Kyle, were you going to say something?
Well, no, you're fine, because I just want to make sure that before we moved on. However, there is a part in this that really kind of seemed like it happened in the Cersei chapter when Tommen's crown is like slipping and he's crying up there, right?
Well, he straight up throws up. That definitely did not happen in the Cersei chapter.
Yeah, and the conversation of him following him outside didn't either, right? So this, I'm going to say this is the day after.
I wasn't sure if she
Cersei
was just blacking out that part and trying to pretend to herself that her son wasn't this embarrassing in front of everybody, because like she's very delusional in her chapter, right? Like that's kind of how I read it.
Well, that's possible, and that's also true, but also just like her description of Tywin when they go up to the beer isn't as bad as Jamie's. And also she does have a conversation with Mace in this chapter outside, even though like in her chapter she also had a conversation with Mace. So I could see what you're saying partially, but she would have to be like hallucinating like pretty much everything after coming in the Sept. So I think it's more likely it's just a different day.
And when she comes to him at night, Kevin said no to her.
That's another good point. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. She already had some knowledge of what happened, but that was kind of where I was at. Was like, was this Cersei? Like, and like I said, or was about to say, I only have 2 chapters of her right so far.
I had the same thought, Kyle. So you're not alone.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is like I don't know. Maybe she does hallucinate, Nelson. Right? Like maybe she does kind of have issues with reality or things like that. I don't know that yet.
People who want, and I think I've probably been sipping this Kool-Aid once or twice. Where people who want one theory, but there's like a very contradictory thing in like a chapter, and we're like, yeah, well, what if that character is just like disassociating and like they're like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type thing? But I think most of the time that's a stretch that we're trying to like squeeze a theory, and I think we should assume that's not the case ever, especially because we don't have any true examples that we know of that.
I think I would agree, except for her. I think there's one character that's gonna like lie to herself about what's happening around her or their self. It could be a man. Like it's gonna be Cersei, right? Like I feel delusional. Like she has been, and I mean even Jamie's like saying like, man, she's pretty paranoid to everybody, right? Like I think he meant we'll get there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was kind of where I was at. Was like, is this we're getting the true story of that day now, or is this the next day? But okay, regardless, let's get into it.
No, so I just want to put a pin in the timeline thing. I think it's at latest the 6th day. Right, so say there's 7 days of services.
When was Cersei there?
She's been there a few times.
We don't know, but I think it's fair to assume that's the first day. Like just from her, again, we weren't thinking about it in that chapter, but she doesn't seem to be saying, "Oh, this is the second time I'm doing this, or the third time I'm doing this."
It's first time she looked at the body, maybe.
But it could be. So I think it's fair to assume that the Cersei chapter could be day 1 through whatever. The hint that it might not be day 1 is Jamie seems very tired, right? So it's only been one day
for a while.
But he also says it's not. He hasn't just not been sleeping through this vigil. He hasn't slept since Tywin died. Which how many days passed between Tywin dying and then them getting the funeral together?
Well, I don't know though, Jeff. Like he's got to be investigating, right? Like so.
Yeah,
first off, super busy at work. Second off, he is fucking feeling guilty as shit, dude. He pulled the trigger. He even says that a few times.
All right, but like physically possible not sleeping for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Well, no,
2 weeks is not true.
But also, I don't think it's unbelievable that, like, so the Cersei 1 chapter, she wakes up, it's morning, or it's actually middle of the night, not even morning yet. Probably the same night Tywin died. Jamie's awake then doing his investigation thing. A whole day passes. Maybe that day is them getting the funeral ready, and Jamie stands vigil that night for night 1.
It's
and then
a day,
Cersei
2
2
days.
is literally the next day. We don't know. Cersei 2 could be the next day from Cersei 1. It's ambiguous how much time's passed. So the funeral could be really short on the heels.
So not 2 weeks. It could be like 3 days so far,
Exactly.
is what Nelson's saying.
Either way, he's not standing in full armor for 7 days in a row.
He does seem kind of loopy in this chapter.
Yeah, but come on, your body's gonna fail you. Like, you can't stand for that long in full armor awake.
Agreed, but there's even parts in this where he thinks he's asleep. He's like, oh, and then a wooden was in front of me. So like he's sleeping standing up.
For sure. What I'm saying is he probably actually fell asleep.
Well, okay, gotcha. So he hasn't been in a bed getting some good Z's since Tywin died, I would think.
Yeah, especially if you're saying it's only been like 8 days. I'm not going to fight you on that. But, all right, overall chapter, another snooze fest.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
This has been the biggest discussion we've had pre-chapter ever, probably.
It's all
and you guys
timeline.
are going to say, I know, but this is kind of exciting stuff, right? I feel like
I always like timeline.
this is where it gets fun, right?
I hope it gets more fun, because these chapters are too long for just like, I know we have to get this, but I'm just like, goddamn, like.
Well, on the point of boring, I agree with boring, and I think it's weird because most of the time, and it's very rare that it happens, where we see 2 characters back to back in the same spot. Like, I'm thinking Blackwater, kind of with Arya and Kat at the Red Wedding. But like, it's very rare that 2 characters are at the same spot.
There might have been some Sansa and Tyrion's at his wedding.
Sansa, Tyrion's, that's true. There was probably about a decent amount. And there was some
or
Sam and
Joffrey's
John's.
wedding, I mean.
There was some, Sam and John's at the end of Storm of Swords with the election stuff.
True.
But most of the time when that's happening, things are kicking
exciting.
off. Like, and this is like, okay, yeah, they're both at this funeral, but it's like a funeral. Like, nothing's really happening. And most of this chapter is Jamie's thinking about random shit. It's not even about like the here
Jeff
and now.
wanted a party.
And it's not, no, I don't want to, I just really don't care. Like, all this internal, distraught guilt that he's feeling, we kind of knew. Like, I don't know. I didn't need 18 pages of his, like, oh, where's Varys? I don't know where Varys is. Where could Varys be? Oh, wait, where is Varys? Like, it's just like, come on.
Just like, just random thoughts, pretty much.
I got a little excited because that was my other prediction from last time, I think, was that we'd find out where Varys was at, but we didn't get any of that yet.
Still don't know yet.
All right, so let's jump in.
Let's get into it.
We're getting into
He's standing in the sept.
He's in all white.
Getting dark, right? Yeah.
I think it's interesting to know he's in all white because Cersei, I think she was like, oh, Tywin would hate to see him like this. He should be in his Lannister gear.
colors. Well, and then the first thing that happens here, though, is that the room turns red.
Because it's dusk, right?
Which is kind of funny, I guess, in the sense of Tywin would have wanted him in red, and then the first we see him is in red, but I didn't even put that together until you said that. So.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that either, but it's true. I think there is a lot of symbolism. I don't really have any thoughts on any of it throughout the chapter, but like I think that's a good point. Later, when morning comes, we get all the rainbow lights that Cersei was talking about that there weren't before.
He finally passed through.
There's like a lot of stars and candle talk throughout. So again, I don't really have any thoughts of it, but I think there's definitely like a decent dose of symbolism in here. But that's not our forte. So if anything sticks out to you guys as we get through, mention it. But yeah, I don't really have anything headed to say.
Yeah, point that out. I like that stuff. I cannot pick it up. So point it out.
Cool. Yeah. So he's standing there at the very beginning. He's not actually alone. Yeah, exactly. People are still like filtering out. I think there's people just praying and stuff, or like maybe the nighttime service. But the main two are Balon and Loras, and they're like, "Hey, you're crazy for trying to stay awake." So I think that hints that
Let me give you a day off, a night off. Go get some Z's.
Yep.
He's not having it. Which, come on, bro. Like, but it also made it seem later on that he has done this before, and like I just think it's.
Well, no, he said he hadn't stood vigil since he basically was knighted. The night he was knighted,
right?
I feel
Did he stand vigil for one night? Like I can understand.
I think it's just one.
I can understand that. It's like working a night shift, right? But 7 days and night shifts in a row.
Yeah,
fuck off.
But
like, does he pee? Does he go to the bathroom? Does he eat? Has he had a sip of water?
When Tommen runs out, he tells Kettleblack to relieve him for a second. So yeah, just tell someone to relieve you.
He probably.
But I mean, in the time we see, he doesn't. So I mean, but if he's not eating, you're not peeing. So
yeah. And he's feeling just massive guilt. Like I've ruined all this. There's a lot of. He goes over this again, like each part that he does, and I do enjoy the details of his meet with Varys, right, which we get soon. But he let Tyrion go, which then he went and killed his dad, which obviously he didn't think was going to happen.
Well, he very directly initiated the chain of events. Like,
correct.
Let's be clear. Like, I mean, he's right to feel guilty here.
Yeah, no, it's his fault. Yeah, he's the catalyst of it all.
Yeah. And here it's because Laura says, like, let me stand for you. And he's like, no, it's not. He wasn't your father, and you weren't the one that killed it. He didn't say this, but he's like, you weren't the one that killed him. And he's like, Tyrion might have loosed the crossbow bolt that slew him, but I loosed Tyrion. That's
he did.
Jaime's
He did
thought.
say that he was not your father part. That was what his
he
reason
said that
was.
you're not your father, but not the killed him part.
Yep.
And then he thinks somebody, if he wants to kill somebody, Varys would be a good person, but he has to find him first. He thinks Varys might have gone with Tyrion on whatever ship to wherever they were going.
I am just as clueless as everybody else as to where Tyrion is. So that
Tyrion.
I'm gonna say that now in terms and Varys as well.
Take a guess on both. Again.
I mean, where are they trying to send Tyrion to Ashai or something? Right? Is that what they're?
I don't know if we know
Maybe
at
he
all
ends up
his destination.
I thought somebody said that throughout here, but I'm gonna say somebody's gonna have to meet up with Dany. Let's give him a Dany meet up here somehow.
Okay.
All right. Both of them? Are they together?
Ooh, I don't know if Varys is with him. Varys is probably in like the wall somewhere, like not the wall in the north, but the wall of the Red Keep somewhere,
Hiding
like
still.
in the wall. Yeah,
Yeah. In tunnels or something.
yeah.
Yep. So then this is where he thinks back to his meeting with Varys. He basically waited in Varys' chamber. Varys came in, kicked him down, got on him, put a dagger to his throat, and he's like, "You're gonna help me save my brother."
A little bit different than I remembered or expected. Like the much more kind of threatening Varys to do it, where
Not as
maybe
much
the
of a
show
team thing.
Yeah, maybe the
Yeah, I think
show
they
was
can show
different.
more.
And I just probably forgot, but I didn't think that it was like you're gonna go do this or I'm gonna slit your throat type of thing.
I think.
I mean, it is just Varys, but it also shows a little bit that Jaime still has some fight in him, right? Like, I think this is kind of, to me, it was surprising.
Well, I think what Jeff's saying is
No, I'm not. This was a completely different point than what Jeff was saying. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm just saying that was another thing I got out of the scene was it was kind of interesting to see Jaime when he was like, he came in the door, I kicked him down, stuck my knife up his throat. I was like, oh man, like I wasn't expecting one-handed Jaime to be this confident.
Oh, so but I guess the important, or not the important point, like, but the part that I think is more interesting here is like before this chapter, I guess, did you think Varys and Jaime were like, hey, like they had like a meeting, like where they're like, hey, we should do this. It didn't seem as much like Varys was being
adversarial,
forced,
forced coercion, into this. No, I agree. I did not think that was the case.
Okay, cool. But basically in that meeting, Jaime had told Varys that Varys like, so you don't think Tyrion's guilty, and Jaime's like, doesn't matter. A Lannister pays his debts. Doesn't really explain that.
Yeah, what debt is he paying?
Is this about the girl, the first wife?
Yeah, I think so. Jaime at the end of the last book, I think thinks this something similar once or twice before he does this.
Like
yeah,
I owe him at least to let him free for this. Yeah.
Yep.
What do you think, Jeff?
I thought he was thinking I owe my dad the debt of standing here because I killed him.
Okay, well this is with Varys, so
he's like, this is why we have to free Tyrion. He's like, it doesn't matter if he's innocent or guilty. I owe him a debt. Lannisters pay their debts.
Which then he talks to Tyrion about his wife, right?
Exactly. That was what I thought it was.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes more sense.
Tyrion he's thinking about all this stuff. Tyrion told him about Cersei, like banging Lancel, banging the Kettle Blacks, and Moon Boy.
That stays on his mind for.
He thinks about that a lot.
For sure. Yeah, that definitely cut him deep. Which is really another kind of weird thing to me in this chapter is he seemed over. Well, I don't know. Didn't he try? He banged her at the Sept.
What you're saying when Joffrey died?
Maybe I'm misremembering.
He banged her when he first got back, but then he said no in the White Sword Tower.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say, there were definitely, like, I thought the last we left it seemed like he was done.
The last time they were together, they were not happy with each other.
Yeah. But then this chapter, he's kind of like back and forth the whole way. That was kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll get there in a sec. So he's back with, back to basically the here and now and his thoughts. He remembers what Tyrion had said. Again, thinks about more where Varys could be. He wonders if Tyrion could have even killed Varys and just left him in the tunnels. He's like, we would never find him. He's like, we'll never map those tunnels. I mean, this seems kind of ridiculous as the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard that just like chalking it up as a futile effort to map the tunnels. Like, you should know this. Like, clearly this is important. If the King's hand just died from these tunnels, like this, as the number one security people, this is now your number one job is mapping these tunnels, right? I would think if I was in jail.
Yeah, they should probably know every entrance in and out.
That's got to be a hard ass deal, though. No.
And he says that he's like, well, immediately me and a dozen men had gone to search it, but he's like, oh man, there was just a dozen passageways. It was kind of crazy.
I would say that it's easier once you know where one is, Jeff. Right? Like they know where the the non-hidden side of what a lot of these holes are now. It's probably hard to like dig in every fireplace and try and find the brick you can pull out. But if you're walking down a hallway and it comes to a dead end, and you can push through
so
it.
You do it like a maze. You just follow the left wall the whole time.
Yeah, I think you have to.
Yeah, you go up whenever you can, and you have to come out somewhere and then map that to a real spot.
But it's so dark too. Like, do you actually know? Think about like trying to then draw a map of like the angle that you're walking, and like if some of them aren't like sharp angles, and like you're just kind of walking.
You'd have to write it down. Like we went down, went left.
Well, the other thing that was interesting when he was reading this, and again, I think it's cool. So Jamie says he went down there. He got into this room with like 12 passageways off. There was like an iron dragon head brazier with like the coals.
Isn't this the room that we saw? Right. This is the room.
This is the room where Tyrion was in and saw the mural on the floor, because Jamie also mentioned this mural. So I'm wondering, why would you put a mural in a like secret passageway? Was this once not a secret passageway? Like, was this like the first level and then they built something on top of this?
Maybe. Yeah, that's a good point. It seems like a pretty sweet mural.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is where the dragon head now is at too, right?
I don't think it is where the dragon's head is.
No, this is just a brazier. It's just like a piece of metal shaped like a dragon's head.
I just thought they had turned an old skull into like use it as the focal point.
That might be true, but this isn't the one with like the big skulls where Tyrion was fucking Shay and Arya snuck into. Yeah, that was a different spot.
If I had any guess, maybe it was like kind of like the White House probably has like the family room, like
you just put the presidential seal on shit, right?
Like, all right, this is like where we go through the back door. And
maybe. Okay, that's fair. At one point, it was more known to like not just Varys, but to like the royal family. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, so when he's down there, I think the cool thing is he sees the sigil and he says that it's like speaking to him, calling him Kingslayer, and he said
it's Rhaegar, right?
Speaking with Rhaegar's voice. Yeah,
a pretty wild deal.
Yeah.
Well, this was cool to me because this is another like so Rhaegar is this very amorphous blob to me still. Yeah. Right? Like I don't really know much about him. So Jeff, that was something that made this chapter a little more fun to me as well. Was like we kind of got some of his relationships with people, and it felt like more of a human because he's been kind of this tall tale and this like I don't know. In my head, I kind of have him pictured as like the Dragon Knight, right? Like a demon kind of like that's like the way he's presented in all these stories. Everybody kind of talks about him as if that's who he was, but then here he seems like he's a fine dude.
Yeah, I do think the relationship, just understanding that they might have had a relationship before. Obviously, he goes off to the Trident and dies.
Well, he definitely did. Jamie was in the Kingsguard and he's the prince, right? So there was definitely some sort of relationship.
So they knew each other. They're making like, there's like a, hey, when I take over, like I'll make change type of thing, which like.
Yeah, we'll read this quote quick, but I think it's cool. And to Kyle's point, I think, we've heard like a lot of the first books were from mainly Stark perspectives. And obviously they have a very negative viewpoint of Rhaegar, who.
The Targaryens, yeah.
Well, the Targaryens in general, but especially Rhaegar, who like kidnaps Lyanna, right? Robert was in love with, like betrothed to her, and like there she goes. So, but like Barristan, who spent a lot of time with him, has said some nice things about him to Dany. So, right, like it seems like the people who were with him in here in this quote will see like he doesn't seem like a horrible dude to talk to. But that doesn't mean you won't do horrible things. So, yeah,
true. But I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. Is it was fun to see a little,
100%,
a little more of him, flesh him out a little further for me.
The day had been windy when he said farewell to Rhaegar in the yard of the Red Keep. The prince had donned his night black armor with the three-headed dragon picked out in rubies on his breastplate. Your Grace, Jaime had pleaded, let Derry stay to guard the king this once. Or Sir Barristan. Their cloaks are as white as mine. Prince Rhaegar shook his head.
My royal sire fears your father more than he does our cousin Robert. He wants you close, so Lord Tywin cannot harm him. I dare not take that crutch away from him at such an hour.
Jaime's anger had risen up in his throat. I am not a crutch. I am a knight of the Kingsguard.
Then guard the king.
Sir John Derry snapped at him.
When you don that cloak, you promise to obey.
Rhaegar had put his hand on Jaime's shoulder.
When this battle is done, I mean to call a council. Changes will be made. I meant to do it long ago, but, well, it does no good to speak of roads not taken. We shall talk when I return. Those
were the last words Rhaegar Targaryen ever spoke to him. Outside the gates, an army had assembled, whilst another descended on the Trident. So the Prince of Dragonstone mounted up and donned his tall black helm and rode forth to his doom.
Yep.
I like the Rhaegar history.
Yep.
For sure.
Rhaegar, again, he's like that. Like I think Kyle said it great. He's like one of those characters that definitely has like a big impact, and I think George is kind of giving us information on him at like a great pace to keep it like tantalizing. Like what is up with this guy? Like the kind of conflicting stories from like who, depending on who you hear from.
Yeah, and he just seems larger than life. Even in this part, though, like he's like he donned his helm, giant helm, and rode off into his doom.
Black
like,
breastplate with rubies.
Yeah, he's the way that they talk about him. Yeah, it's like I said, it's weird to me. Like he feels bigger than the mountain almost.
So the other thing
mentally,
is,
right?
I think Jamie has had this quote. He said this quote at some point in the past when he's thinking of like Arthur Dane and himself and stuff like that. He's like, I always wanted to be Arthur Dane, but somewhere along the lines, I came the Smiley Knight, who was like this storied bad guy from the Kingswood Brotherhood, kind of like a barrack figure. And then he says something along the lines of, back in those days, knights as well as swords were made of finer steel. And then he's like, or maybe I was just 15 and didn't really understand what was actually happening because I was just ignorant to it all. So I think that's also interesting when you're looking at like quotes like this, is like Rhaegar says like, oh, I'm going to change stuff. Jamie doesn't, he doesn't seem to know if he does think what that quite mean, he doesn't really say it. But like, I think it's also a hint that Jamie's probably like 16 or 17 here and he doesn't know. There's a lot of shit that's just like above his head, or he's like, you know what I mean? He's like, okay, yeah, he's a good young, he's like the Loras, where like Loras doesn't know a lot of the shit that he's like, you know what I mean? He's not involved in the politics and stuff. He's just the young knight in the Kingsguard right now. So,
how old is Rhaegar?
I would say Ned-ish age.
I mean, this is about when he dies, right? So
yeah,
low 30s, high 20s,
maybe a little older
in this?
than that.
Oh, really? I thought him and Jamie were closer. Okay.
Well, let me see. It's a good question. 23, 24.
That's kind of what I meant by, I guess, closer to Jamie. Like not like he's older, a big brother figure,
older cousin, big brother for sure.
Let me see how old Jamie was this time. I think we hear he was 15 when he was knighted, but I'm not 100% sure how much later that was.
He's 17 at this point.
Jamie's 7 years younger than Rhaegar.
17.
Yeah, but he just had his name day, so he was 17.
Well, again, still, and I think that's a fair point. That like it's not as Jamie wouldn't be as uninvolved as I'm maybe hinting at, but yeah, I think again there is some boyhood ignorance with Jamie's.
That wasn't my point necessarily.
Jamie.
It was just me trying to figure out the relationship.
Yeah,
I wasn't trying to negate what you were saying. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's a good point.
All right, so now we get into his emotions.
One other thing about the quote. I mean, we might have some other things about the quote. One thing I wanted to mention: Rhaegar says, My royal sire fears your father more than he does our cousin Robert."
Yeah, it is an interesting point. I guess we should talk on.
I think there's two interesting points in here.
Well, so his royal sire, right? That's his dad.
That's the king.
Aerys, the Mad King, because this is Rhaegar talking. My father fears your father. My father fears Tywin more than he fears our cousin Robert. I think the one interesting thing is Rhaegar is calling
that he's
Robert
cousins with Robert.
Yeah. I mean, we know this, but like, yeah, it's kind of interesting that
very,
Rhaegar
very
is
thin
referring to him that way.
Cousin, right?
Not very thin. Aerys and Robert's dad were first cousins.
Okay, so I mean, Aerys is Robert's second cousin, which makes but what I was saying is Rhaegar to Robert is like second cousin once removed, or like third cousin.
I don't know. Like your dad, who's a cousin that your dad or mom? I know you're a big Family Guy. Your dad or mom has a cousin that I know, probably, right? A first cousin.
Yeah, like Scoop. I think Scoop is like either my mom's cousin or my mom's second cousin.
So then Swag.
Like I call Swag my cousin just because it's easier for everybody, but like
no, he is your cousin. He's just your second cousin. If Scoop is your mom's cousin, then Swag is your second cousin.
I think my mom and Scoop are second cousins, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't like that you have two people named Scoop and Swag.
And Scoop isn't even like a young bull. He's an old buck and a big dog. He's a great dude. But my point there is, if that's true, Jeff, then you and Swag are less related than Rhaegar and Robert. So that proves my point even more. And nobody else is going to know this because nobody else knows your family except for me and you. But
I hate trees like that, like the first cousin, second cousin.
I'll just put a little family tree in there. But again, you and Swag are pretty close. Like
sure.
But you guys are less related than Rhaegar is to Robert.
Yeah, it's because but just because you're cousins doesn't mean you like each other.
That's true, or that you're close. That's very true. But I think again, interesting. Like you don't really think about it being that close. So, but the other interesting part of that quote, Aerys thought that Tywin was more afraid of Tywin than Robert. Robert has a fucking army and has been winning battles. It's like an actual
but
force.
doesn't Tywin have an army too?
And everybody, literally, the entire point of this is everybody is afraid of Tywin. That was our last chapter. Our last podcast was us talking about how afraid of Tywin everybody.
He also like eliminated two families. Like Robert is on like a war call because
Robert's
he lost
drunk
his
and
girlfriend.
partying.
Sure, but hold on. I just want to put like to Jeff's question, like what is Tywin doing at this point in the war? No one knows. You're right. He does have he could muster an army, but I think we don't know whose side he's joined.
Sure.
Right? So it's just more like Aerys is more afraid of radio silence from Tywin than he is of the guy marching to the capital with an army.
Because he definitely called his banners, right? He definitely called Tywin to come join his army. It's not like he just
Tywin has been the hand.
It's not like he was letting Tywin be a free agent in this war. He's like, yo, come on, let's go. And he didn't answer the call. So it's like, what the fuck is that? I'm going to keep your son here because of that. Like, don't fuck with me.
That's fair. Almost not answering in that situation's insinuation of this isn't great for you. Yeah. Okay, cool.
All right, so now we get into how Jaime's kind of feeling about his emotions.
Sorry, Jeff. One last thing. What does Rhaegar want to change? I think that's kind of the main point of the quote, and I don't know if we talked about it yet.
No, we didn't, and I like that thought. I don't have a great answer, and I was kind of hoping you would forget it, but yeah, I do like your thought. It seemed like he was at the very least going to try and get Jaime some respect. Maybe he was going to let him.
I don't think he doesn't have respect at this point. Like, he hasn't killed the king.
Well,
yet.
I meant like get some respect in that, like he could become the heir to Lannisterville, Casterly Rock.
Well, that would be ditching his vow, though.
I understand, and that's what I'm saying. Is like maybe that's this meeting, right? Like, things are going to change. What you asked me, what I thought was going to change.
Okay, gotcha.
And I think maybe the rules around some of that might change, or that could have been something he was proposing.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because it's hypothetical. We know it doesn't actually happen, whatever it is. It doesn't happen.
Well, I know, but you guys still might know the answer. I don't know if you know the answer or not. But
I know all the answers.
The other thing I was going to say is I just thought of he is a Targaryen, right? So maybe he knew about him and Cersei.
Ooh, more families could get it going.
Gonna pass some laws that Jaime likes.
Keep the blood pure.
I mean, that wasn't anything
now.
I was thinking until I just was like, oh wait, he's a Targaryen.
I think that's the best theory. Let's make a YouTube video on it.
All right, we're back to Alone with Tywin. Done thinking again, just random thoughts all over. We're back to Alone with Tywin. Jaime's noticing the smile.
It's getting curlier. His smile's curling more.
But there's even a few times Jaime says things out loud to the body. So I think here he says, "Isn't it funny that Aerys thought that keeping me closer would keep him safer?" Because obviously hindsight, Jaime stabbed him, and he's like, Tywin thought that was amusing. His smile was getting bigger. It's like, yeah, it's kind of weird. He's like, Jaime again. Tywin never really smiled before. Looks like he enjoys being dead. I think this is interesting.
Can I ask my question now?
Sure.
We get into Jaime's own emotions about this whole thing, really. And I'm curious to Kyle, because now we have the second Lannister kid who also couldn't cry and really doesn't feel anything but guilt here at this moment. So
there's a couple things, right? I mean, he definitely goes into how he wasn't supposed to show emotion in public, right? Like, they definitely talk about how that was like, you weren't allowed to cry.
Yeah.
He's like, you taught me that, Tywin. Like, you can't expect me to be crying for you right now. You're the one that taught me it was a pussy ass move to cry in public.
So that's definitely there. But I think there's another part of this where, like, he was kind of their abuser, right? Tywin seems kind of like he was.
Yeah.
Cersei and Jaime's like he wasn't, and Tyrion, like, obviously Tyrion didn't like the dude.
I think it's fair for Tyrion. I don't know if it's fair to say that he abused Cersei.
I think it's fair, man. I think he emotionally abused them, for sure.
Abused, like,
not intentionally though.
I mean, withholding love from your children is abuse.
I don't think he was intentionally trying to abuse Tyrion. Yes, maybe. Cersei and Jaime, no.
I do think it goes back to what he's trying to teach Jaime. What he was trying to teach Jaime to be the leader that he thought was the only way to be the leader. Cersei listened in on that because she always wanted to be Jaime.
And how did he do that?
Well,
I mean, he withheld love, right? Like, that was definitely.
I forget what was the quote that Cersei said she overheard Tywin tell Jaime last chapter. I honestly
love doesn't keep you warm.
Yeah, love doesn't
feed you. Love doesn't.
Exactly. You're right. I'm not gonna say. Yeah.
So I mean, that's abuse, man. These are your fucking kids. You can't withhold love from them. Don't shake your head, Nelson.
No, I agree with that. You can't withhold love for your kids, but I think imparting tough lessons on your kids isn't bad. And again, I don't agree. I'm not agreeing with it.
It can be done with love.
He's not taking the Michael Scott approach.
I'm not agreeing with Tywin's lessons. And the other thing I think is important is you can learn a lot from your parents from the things they do, but you can also like learn the negative, right? Like, like I remember when I was a kid, there was things my dad would do. I'm like, I'm never gonna fucking do that when I'm a dad or like when I'm an adult, right? Like,
but you say that, but you're not yet old. First off, and like the older everybody gets, the more they realize they're turning into their parents. it's also, I mean, generational trauma is a thing, like, and you have to break that cycle eventually, right? So, I mean, it does happen, but it's hard to do.
I agree. And again, I don't want to seem like I'm taking the Taiwan side because I kind of am here, but I'm half playing the devil's advocate. But the other thing I think is interesting is at the end, Jaime has a kind of Taiwan-y thought. He's like, hey, send Mace away. We'll talk about that more later. But it's Taiwan-y, and Cersei even ends the chapter saying that sounded a little bit like Tywin. Like, so yes, he was emotionally like cold to them and like solid there, but Cersei and Jaime have also learned a lot of, I think, good things from Tywin. Cersei maybe less so, but
are either of them good people?
I think Jaime is on his way.
How did he get there? Brienne.
Sure, Brienne, but but there's still parts of Tywin that there are like nuggets of, there are diamonds in the rough,
think
right?
there are still things, like there's still good lessons that he could have learned from Tywin, even though he was emotionally abused.
Yes,
by
there's
him.
babies in the bathwater, and I think Jaime's doing a good job of not throwing the babies out with the bathwater.
Never heard that saying before.
There's I've never heard multiple babies in the bathwater. That makes me that made that saying like it amped.
It's the
it
same
up
thing
a
as the
little bit there.
diamonds in the rough, but that might be
I know
more
what
of
you
a
meant.
that might be more
Yeah.
singular too. But yeah,
It was just curious because, like, obviously Cersei did the same. I had the same reaction as Jaime.
yeah, exactly.
And I'm not saying this is how I'm planning on continuing to race JJ, or or
100%.
Yeah, you're changing now because we had this discussion and you decided to change your mind.
No. I've
No,
Jeff's
always
been telling JJ the Tywin lessons up till
Notice
now.
I'm laughing,
No love.
right? Like, that was the joke. But yeah, no, I know. Yeah, it's. I mean, I understand Nelson saying he can kind of relate to the idea of it, but at the same time, like, I mean, it's pretty fucked. Like, these are your kids. Like, you can't just be hard on them all the time.
And your dad's dead, and you have no feeling to it, right?
Yeah,
So,
right. That's pretty awful, right? Like, exactly. I think if you want proof of that being an awful way to raise your kids, I think right here is your proof in Jaime
everyone
and
should
Cersei,
read
right?
Cersei 2 and Jaime 1
I agree. Yes.
chapters.
Again, and I don't agree with Tywin. I was kind of playing devil's advocate there. And
I
yes,
understand.
yes,
Yeah, we have to
yes.
have conversations on here. Like, it's fair. But
Well, somebody is showing a lot of emotion, and that's Maester Pycelle.
Yep. So Jaime thinks back to a conversation with him at some point.
Pycelle's freaking out. He's like, I served 6 kings. This is the greatest man I ever knew. Yeah, like, he should have been king.
Wore no crown, but was all a king should be. Yep. I like that
He's
quote.
just fucking blubbering. He's got no
Wah,
stupid
wah, wah,
beard,
wah,
or
wah.
no sick ass beard now. His face looks stupid. Is rather what Jaime is thinking the whole time.
Can
here.
you imagine Dumbledore without his beard? Is how I'm kind of picturing.
Well, it's not even without. It's like without his beard, and he's got a fucking weak ass chin. That's like, and it's got like wispy.
He's
Like,
trying to grow it back, and he just got a Nelson beard.
Yeah. Yeah, not good.
Well, the other thing that's kind of weird is Jamie's like, it was soft as lamb's wool. It's like, how were you? When were you?
Was he
touching?
stroking it too?
Were they passing it around after Shagga chopped it off or something? Like, how does Jaime know?
If it's down around his belt, like you can tell if it's like that's some fine hair,
like
or
a
that's
coarse
some
hair, like
scraggly-
yeah.
Like, I mean, he could probably tell it was nice. It was probably like all over stuff.
Shimmery.
Too.
It's probably
touch it
shimmery,
occasionally.
and
He's like, Pycelle, get that beard off my chair, and had to pick
And
it up
maybe
and move
Jaime
it
was
and
here
stuff.
when he was like a very little kid. I don't know exactly when Tywin was hand, but like maybe he was like grabbing at him when he was a kid or something. But yeah, I don't know.
Santa Claus.
He wasn't here as a Kingsguard until he was 15, so hopefully he's not touching 15-year-old. I mean, maybe they were pranking him or something.
sometimes you gotta touch a beard.
But Pycelle tells a story about he's like, Tywin did the hard choices, and Pycelle tells a story about this other lord who made some hard choices.
It was an interesting story. I didn't remember this one.
The Grey Plague took place in Old Town when he was there at the Citadel. This is not the same thing that we've heard from the Duncan Egg stories. Because I was wondering, like, Pycelle's old. Could this be like the spring sickness?
You're saying a different plague, or
it's not the spring sickness. I think this is
The
more of like
spring
an
sickness and the
isolated
Grey Plague are
event
different.
in Old Town. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's kind of the point that Pycelle's saying is like, this was an isolated event because this guy did some hard measures. He basically locked everything down, burnt the ships, no one in or out. If you're trying to sneak in or out, you're dead. Man, woman, or child, dead. He's like, everybody cursed him for it. 3/4 of the city died, or 3/4 of the half the city and 3/4 of the Citadel died. I think this is also important. This was only 80 years ago. We had a crazy, massive thinning of maesters.
We've got a lot of maesters that aren't trained. They had to get out there and
Yeah,
serve.
that's true.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this guy locked it down. He's like, and as soon as the plague was over, like he actually stopped this shit from spreading. And it seems like what Pycelle is saying is this shit would have spread everywhere, and he stopped it from spreading.
Destroyed the realm. Yeah, he did the best thing ever, and his people killed him because
it's all local. The next day, as soon as everything was back open, they killed him the next day.
Go figure.
So we explain Pycelle explains Tywin's smiling. That's the next bit. Pycelle explains the smiling. It's not he's smiling. It's just the skin is dry.
Is this real? I mean, I'm sure the skin
100%.
actually does dry. I know that. Does it dry into a smile? Like, what if it dried into a frown?
Yep. It's just the way your face, like,
because
when it
of the
tightens,
muscles.
it goes. Yeah. Well, yeah, and the way your head's shaped and all that. I think. Do you know the other things after you die? What happens?
I know you shit yourself.
You get cold.
Yeah, I mean your bowels kind of release.
Stiffen up.
Yeah.
Fill with gas.
I was talking more of over time. So like your hair appears to grow. That's another thing. Is like people thought like your hair continued growing after you die. It doesn't. It's your skin. Like it's just your skin receding, right? And it's like more of it is hanging out.
Oh, it's like gotcha.
And then your fingernails, same thing. I think is the other thing they thought continued to grow. So like this is like old timey stuff. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So like you're kind of wasting away, and these things stay, right? So it's kind of the same.
I'll ask you some other questions about what happens to dead bodies when we get to some of the other descriptions of Tywin later. So if that's
I might not be the best at that. I mean, I
seem to know a lot about dead bodies.
My wife does. Yeah. I mean that stuff's cool, right? Like I would like to be donated to a body farm or something like that when I die.
Yeah,
why not?
My grandmom actually is. My grandmom's in Philly right now.
Oh, that's I don't want to say cool.
She
but it's cool.
She donate. Well, she was really excited about it. She went deaf, and she also had early onset dementia. So she donated her body to science to do whatever.
Yeah. I mean that might be more like studying of organs and stuff, but the like the body farms is like they like just throw your body in a field and like various conditions. Like, okay, this guy's, in a field, this guy's covered by leaves. This is under 6 inches of dirt or whatever. And then they like kind of come back over time to see, and then you can compare crime scenes to these. And that's kind of how they kind of figure out
like time.
We know in these conditions, this is what happens to a human body. So then they can kind of figure out like what happened to the victim.
Yeah, no, that's cool stuff.
So stuff like that's kind of neat. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not going to say I'm an expert by any means, Nelson. So, but you can ask. Go for it.
We'll get to it in a second. So Pycelle fucks off again. Jamie's thinking back. Pycelle's not here in the middle of the night. He fucks off. Jamie's thinking like, no wonder Cersei thinks he's treasonous. The dude's crazy. I don't think anything Pycelle said was crazy. He honestly just praised Jamie's dad.
I don't know if it's crazy or if it's just like, oh, like give it a rest.
Or
Pycelle.
useless.
Like, we know you don't know what you're saying. We know we don't. No one believes what you're saying. Like shut up.
Yeah.
And like
he doesn't even believe it.
Is the cane
new? I don't know if we've heard of this before, but it's mentioned here. He had a cane.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, so he's like, no wonder he thought he's useless. Cersei thinks everybody's useless, though. Useless or treasonous. And he goes through a quick list of people. Pycelle, Kingsguard, Tyrells, even Jaime. And last one is Sir Ilyn, because he's technically in charge of the dungeons. And that's how we get on the next guy. Rennifer Longwaters. So he's like, Ilyn is technically in charge because he's the chief justice, but he doesn't have a tongue. So he pretty much...
Longwater seems to be the accountant of the...
He's the bookkeeper for sure.
He's in charge because...
Ilyn doesn't care.
Yeah.
Making the schedules.
Exactly.
There's also
signing
six
the keys
people in the cells. Like, that's pretty crazy, right? Is there six? There's 6
5
people?
now. 6 with Tyrion. Yeah.
Well, that's Jaime's final answer at the end here. It's like, why do we have all these
this can't be the
fucking
only
people?
jail in the biggest city of
Oh, no. This is the
King's
the
Landing.
King's.
This is the royal prison.
Yes.
Right? Like, it's really funny when they get into
be.
the numbers of...
The gold cloaks have to have something.
Right. Like, forever. The commoners aren't coming into the Red Keep cells.
No,
They're in the what's it called? Flea bottom cells.
Yeah, exactly.
Eating brown.
I don't think that's true. Because we know of 3. At one point, we mentioned 3 people who were in the black cells. We know who those 3 people were.
There were.
Yeah, but these are like 3 of the most ruthless criminals in the city.
Yeah, but 2 of them were Morgan Biter,
handle.
who were just people in the city.
Yeah, but maybe they can't. Maybe they don't have a place to house them there, right? Like the cells in Flea Bottom weren't enough security. This is super max prison.
This is Arkham Asylum.
Okay, maybe, but the other thing I would say is Joffrey was just king, and I don't think he was the lock him up type of hand of justice. He was more like line him up hand of justice.
Put him on the wall.
Depending on, again, I think it's possible that the actual entire city, like Joffrey was shooting crossbow people.
He just killed every single criminal. He just killed him. They came in and he killed him.
I don't know.
And people just let him do that.
If you steal, do you chop their hand off and shit
exactly.
like that?
A lot of criminals, it's not like you lock them up. It's okay, hand or tongue or something. Or at least that's how Joffrey dealt with it. It was like I think there was a singer, right? And he's like, fingers or tongue? Which one? Maybe that's a show only thing, but
No, I think that was in the book.
Yeah, so like again, I think that's more of how justice is dealt with. So I think it's not unrealistic, but I also think it is an interesting point that we only got 6 cats.
It's also pretty interesting that you're housing the criminals in the castle.
Yeah, why would you bring them in closer to your king? Yeah,
that's true.
That should be like a great set type of.
Yeah, as far
put
away
them in
as
the
possible.
dragon pit, right? Which is useless right now. Like
island, Alcatraz. Turn Dragonstone into a.
Not Dragonstone. I'm saying the dragon pit. Now.
I know even
the
I know.
ruin.
But I'm saying just put them on an island like Alcatraz.
Yeah, I guess you could do that too. All right, so we get into this interview with Longwaters.
Renifer.
We even get a little bit of history in his name. He's got some royalty to him. Didn't really understand the line that he was saying. Like, was his mom banged by a prince type of thing?
Well, so his mom was not his mom. Basically, the Targaryen, where he gets some of his, because he claims to have royal blood, and he says basically where that comes from is the fairest maid in the maiden vault. We know about this is Baelor the Blessed, who was really pious. He locked up all his beautiful sisters because he didn't want the temptation. So he locked them up in the Maiden Vault. And now that's just like a place where people stay. Like Marjorie's currently staying in the Maiden Vault, I think, like as a guest. The Tyrells are staying there and her ladies or something. But yeah, so Baelor locked up his sisters there. He says that the fairest of them, a great admiral, fell in love with her. Lord Oakenfist fell in love with her. But he was married to another, but they had a bastard who took the name Waters. But that bastard grew to be a knight, so when he had a son, because he's no longer lowborn, I think this is how this is working. Because that guy became a knight, it's like if when Davos became Sir Davos, he became Sir Davos Seaworth. He got like a last name, right? So I think that's kind of the idea, because he says their son was named Waters because he was a bastard, but he grew to be a great knight, and then his own son, who also was a knight, but he put the name Long before the Waters, so people would know he wasn't lowborn himself. And again, I think that's because his father's a knight, so he became unlowborn by becoming a knight, which I wasn't 100% sure how that worked, but I think that's what that's insinuated here with the whole, he was a knight.
Okay.
That's how that worked.
I mean, his grandfather also wasn't really lowborn either. It was Lord Oakenfort, or Oakenfist, but
yeah.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, so he was a bastard whose dad turned out all right.
Again, this is one of the things that's like a very tall tale-y, so like who knows if this is even true. But what's interesting is there's some spoilery stuff in here that not really spoilery, but even some stuff that I would talk about history right now that's not spoilery to Kyle, but would be spoilery to Jeff.
Interesting.
From House of the Dragons. Because some of these...
I mean, we know some of these are Targaryens,
Do
right?
you want me to put earmuffs on?
Not really. Kyle wouldn't know what I'm saying, but I mean, some of the fans might. But again, it would be more of a spoiler section thing in general anyway. But I think I've alluded to it so that if anybody knows what I'm talking about, they will understand what we're saying. So... Longwaters, he is kind of funny. He kind of has a pippish. Some of the stuff he says is like when Jamie's like, "Can I question the people?" He's like, "You can question them. I don't know if they'll answer you." Like he gives like kind of sarcastic. He does think he's hot shit.
I don't know though, Nelson. I thought he was kind of a dweeb.
I think
that was how I read him. He's like, I'm super important,
what do you mean,
but all I do is look at my papers.
All of my
and
books are accurate. Like if
good luck
if
talking to them.
I wrote
it
down.
Yeah. Good luck talking to them, but they're dead.
Self-proclaimed importance.
Yeah. So I didn't think I didn't think he was as funny as. I guess because I read it in a different tone. Is what I'm trying to say. But.
No, I agree with that, but I think that's kind of.
He's no Pip. I'll tell you that.
He's no.
I'll confirm he's no Pip.
No Dolores Ed.
No.
So when Jamie's questioning him, he's like, "We have more important things to talk about than your lineage."
Talk to me about this Rugen guy.
Interesting line here. Jamie says, "I know who Rugen is, even if Longwaters doesn't."
Yeah, that's the interesting part of this conversation.
Is it though? I mean, like he knew he was here before. Jamie's been here, right? Like Jamie done been here with the old king. Rugen's an old king guy.
Rugen started for a while.
They've been around since the same
Jamie's
time.
just. Yeah.
Rugen says he's only been here 12 years.
We don't know. How long's Longwaters been
No. Longwater's only been here 12 years. He's like, Rugen was here before me. So.
And he was here for he was an Ares guy.
Exactly.
That was like the whole point of him.
Yeah, and so was Jamie. So that's good point.
Yeah. The other side of it is, when was Ned down here?
A year and a half ago.
Was Jamie here, I guess, is the question, when Ned was down here.
He might have been fighting the war. He went off the war.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
They were here. Yeah, no, because Jamie and Ned had a conversation in the streets where Ned hurt his leg, and then when Ned woke up, Jamie was gone. So Ned was never in the cells while Jamie was here. But they were both in King's Landing for a time.
But he might have went down and talked to the guy and been like, you know, like, here he is, you got to do this and this and this with him. So that might be how he knows Rugen.
Yeah, told him how to talk to them.
Or how to like keep Ned and keep these people away from him.
Jamie was never in the city while Ned was in jail. They were in the city at the same time, but never while Ned was in jail.
I understand, but he woke up in jail, right?
Who?
With the broken leg, Ned?
No.
Or was that not in jail? He woke up at home.
Yeah.
He sat the throne for a little bit while Robert was out hunting and all kinds of
You're
shit.
right. Yeah, my bad. Anyway.
All right. So what we get is that nobody really liked Rugen. He was a weird dude. Didn't do his fair share, right? Like, no one was in his cells half the time, too, which is another stupid thing. Like,
well, he was never around, but because there was nobody ever in his cells.
Like, what are you guarding? Who's there?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Like,
because he was in charge of the black cells,
Yeah. And then we've just find out that they've hired so many people to keep track of these cells.
Yeah.
For the 6 total people that have been in there since we've started reading this book.
Yeah, we did mention for the black cells, he's like basically nobody was ever in them. Pycelle, Ned was before them, and then the 3 common men who we know to be Jack and Morgan Biter. He's like, I didn't think it was good to let them go, but the papers were in order. Papers came from Ned and Yoren, so I don't think there's really a mystery with that. But it's kind of, I don't know, is this just recappy stuff? It seemed weird for him to talk.
Well, I think it's kind of like, yeah, man, those 3 are fucked up. I think is more of what I know, but I think maybe they're more fucked up than we know.
Oh, gotcha.
I think is what that added to me. It was like, we have some messed up people saying they were messed up, right?
Yep.
Or jailers that probably see some pretty awful low lifes, and then for them to say it. But although at the same time, these jailers are probably the same people that are like, yeah, lock them up, right? They need to be here. They deserve it. So who knows? Anyway. So
then he starts getting, kind of like Jeff was alluding to, into staffing and finance stuff. He's like, the Crown pays for 20 turnkeys, but we have like 12 max. They pay for 6 undergoalers. We only have 3 under jailers. We only have 3. Renifer, and he's like, and I'm the chief jailer. And then we have the King's Justice too.
Yeah, I hold the important title.
And there's only 6 prisoners. And
well, he's like, wait, what do you mean these weren't jailers? And he's like, yeah, they're just fucking turnkeys.
Yeah.
He's like, what the fuck are you talking about, turnkeys? And he says, well, you're one of the 6 jailers, right? And he's like, no,
Yeah.
I am chief jailer. There are 6 under me. And he's like, what the fuck are you fucking talking about?
Like, there should be 3 of all of you total.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is, he says like the Crown pays for 20 turnkeys, but we only have 12. Like,
what does a turnkey do? Do they literally walk down the key and open the cell? Like, the jailers don't have the key.
They're a guard. It's the same thing as I don't know. He's just picking at straws. There's no difference between me and the person that doesn't have the promotion I do at work. We all do the same shit. We all just code. Well, I just get paid a little more because I've been around longer. I think that's
it's all title based.
I don't know about that as much, Jeff. They probably do more of the dumb shit, right? Like
empty
the more menial stuff,
the shit bins,
and like and take care of deliver the food, turnkey, right? Like they have the key. They're letting people in and out. Like that kind of shit.
My point though with the whole numbers thing is like, if there's only 12, you're not paying wages for 20. Like, you're just not paying.
So the other thing,
right?
Nelson, on that I think would be like, they have empty positions, right? Is what he's trying to say. Maybe.
Well, where's the money going?
Like, there's nobody even there. There's nobody in jail.
Well, they don't have to be paying for it, but like where I work, there's a full complement of, I'm going to say 30 people. That's not true, but so like 30 people, but we might have 18 positions filled. That means that we have, we have the capacity for 12 more, right?
Yeah, it's in the budget. I agree. It's in the budget. My point is here, so Jamie says
like we could get paid for that, but we don't have those people. They
agreed.
don't exist.
My point is Jamie is complaining because he says 6 prisoners while we pay the wages for 20 turnkeys, 6 under jailers.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe they're just taking the money.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, if you shouldn't be paying for it if they're not there. So I get it. It's in the budget.
Why did this guy tell him that they're paying for it? It's a good question.
Well, again, I don't know if they're paying for it. I would think more like what you're saying, where it's budgeted, but it's not necessarily like we don't need it right now. And again, I wonder if it's because Joffrey's line them up, not lock them up type justice.
There's too many of y'all. Give me the 2 that were asleep. And I need to talk to them about what happened that night.
Yep.
And this is the sarcastic, kind of hard. Cersei had them killed. Like, oh shit.
Well, he didn't know who did it. He's like, oh, the Kingsguard killed him. I thought it might have been you.
You fucking idiots killed him. Yeah.
Weird, because Jamie was there when Cersei commanded this. So
was that like in the room with everybody?
Yeah, he was like crawling out of the fireplace at that point in time, I think.
Well, he was crawling out of the fireplace while they were taking Shay's body down.
I understand, Nelson. I'm just saying, like, he was like freshly in the room, probably like.
Well, I'm saying it's after she slapped him, so he might have left, but I don't think it was mentioned if he left. When then Boris comes back and he's like, "Oh, Tyrion's gone." It's
also Cersei just yelling things out, like how many people like jump to do
kill this guy, kill this guy, kill this guy.
All right, so we're back to nighttime. The smell is really bad now at this point. And he starts thinking of crows, right? He's having some weird kind of dreamy thoughts. Crows are flying around above him, right? You guys with me?
Yep. Yeah, he's pretty much like, well, I was trying to see if we skipped anything. You're right. But the crows thing was like, we fight our whole lives for this fucking power to be king and be in charge. And these crows just shit on our heads and eat our corpse no matter what, right? Like,
We all
it doesn't
die the
matter.
same.
Yeah, there's a song, Worms, right? It's like the same worms that eat me are the same worms still eat you too, right? Like, it doesn't fucking matter. In the end, we're all a feast for crows.
Exactly. I think it's a little hint towards the title of the book.
So,
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the one thing I think we did miss on when basically he scolds Osmond and Boros. The only thing in there really, I think, is he basically gives them the same command with Cersei as he did with Tommen. He's like, when I think
Before you do anything, you come to me.
Yeah, but I think it was because Joffrey commanded him to do something stupid. He's like, if he tells you to cut off his horse, if he tells you to like get his horse, saddle his horse, obey him. If he tells you to cut his horse's head off, come to me or something like that.
I think you said Tommen, but you meant Joffrey.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that we get a little more insight into the plan here, where Varys dosed these guys with wine, night wine, or like sleeping wine or something. He's like, they had no idea anyway. So he didn't say it to anybody, but he's like, they had no idea what happened anyway because Varys dosed them. Well, yeah, and so I guess we're getting more fleshed out of that.
Well, Jaime, he's like, maybe you killed them because you're trying to hide your own tracks, Osmond, Boros. Mm-hmm. Which again, Jaime knows what happened, so he's just like throwing some shade. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think that's the only thing we missed in that conversation. Back to the crows, exactly, and then kind of what you guys were saying. How much can a crown be worth when a crow can dine upon a king? Is how kind of Jaime puts some of like the sentiments that we were saying.
We got some dead kings too.
Yeah.
Every crow in the Seven Kingdoms should pay homage to you, Father. From Castamere to the Blackwater, you fed them well. That notion pleased Lord Tywin. His smile widened further. Bloody hell, he's grinning like a bridegroom at his bedding.
They're just saying he killed a lot of people. He fed.
Yeah, oh yeah, he fucking fed the crows, right? He definitely led to a bunch of death.
Hold on, keep going a little bit.
That was so grotesque it made Jaime laugh aloud. The sound echoed through the transepts and crypts and chapels as if the dead interred within the walls were laughing too. Why not? This is more absurd than a mummer's farce. Me standing vigil for a father I helped to slay, sending men forth to capture the brother I helped to free.
Yeah, so again, just I think all of it, right? Like what you guys were saying.
It's all ironic.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. All right, so now he's thinking of, there's obviously a search for Tyrion, and if he's in King's Landing, it's got to be at a brothel in a closet somewhere.
Well, Jaime knows this is a farce. It's kind of what he said. He's like, I'm sending men forward to capture people, the brother I helped free. I know he's not there. Later, Cersei says he might be on his way to Highgarden. Jaime says he's not. She doesn't even say anything back to that, but he's like, he's not. I know where he's going. To be
fair, Tyrion went off track here of the whole plan. He should
That's
just
true.
left.
For sure.
So
That's true.
He went and killed Tywin. Who says he didn't say like, all right, fuck you, I'm not going on your ship. I'm going to the brothel.
Well,
that's true. That's true.
It was funny that he's like, man, all these kings or all these glow cloaks are just gonna, bang on the brothel ladies.
They're gonna find more interesting things under the sheets than under the beds.
Yeah, like this is just gonna create a whole bunch of bastards. Like, this isn't even worth doing. Yeah, that's too funny.
Then he thinks of Brienne. He gives a little prayer. Father, give her
calls
strength.
her a stupid, stubborn, ugly wench, and then he's very nice to her, right?
Father, give her strength, but he didn't know if he was praying to the god or to the corpse in front of him. He's like, doesn't matter. Neither of them have ever listened to me. The warrior is my only god. That's all I would ever be, which kind of comes back when Cersei comes back here in a second. That's like kind of what he says to her.
Yep.
So he thinks again about Cersei being a whore. She fucks everybody.
Wait, and where are you at? Because don't the Septons walk in?
Right, 175.
Right
We're not
before,
there
I
yet.
was right before
okay.
that.
All right. Because I have that a lot later on. When maybe he thinks
It's
about it
all
a couple
over the
times,
place.
right?
It's right here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's going through it a bunch.
And then at midnight, a bunch of Septons came in. Hundreds of Septons, 7 Septas, and then some Silent Sisters, like coming from the father, mother, and strangers' door. It's kind of cool, but like, do they do this every night, or is it only a funeral
That's what
thing?
I was asking. Is this like an every night deal? Like, that's wild.
This felt like it was for this. I don't know. This whole thing seemed
Specifically
very
for Tywin.
But then they just all
yeah.
go pray at each of the 7 altars, not at Tywin or anything. So
I know, but this is still a wake, right? Like, or a funeral or whatever.
You're still praying. You're praying for something, right? So you're praying for Tywin at each of the 7, like stranger, take him, whatever, father, watch him, mother be gracious.
Well, I did want to say, a host of brothers appeared as well in robes of brown and butternut and dun, and even are these the dudes that Arya saw?
Brienne saw people on the road. I don't know if it's the same people because timeline's tricky, but it seems like the same
type.
Iron Hammer, begging bowls, right? Yeah,
same brand,
same group.
So
of
it's
people.
Brienne. Sorry, but yeah, it seemed like the Brienne people to me, for what that's worth.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Cool.
Yep. And he thinks about his last vigil now. We mentioned it before. I don't know who he was standing vigil for, right? He's not a member of the Kingsguard yet. He was a young squire.
Well, I think the implication here is that it's like part of the ritual to become a knight. He's like, this had been years since his last vigil. He wasn't even wearing armor. He was 15. He was just wearing a white tunic. And the sept that he was in at that point was not a third of the size of one of the transepts, which is like one of the 7 septs that come off of each of the main gods. It's like it wasn't a third of the size of a seventh of the size of this sept, basically. So like this sept, first off, this sept is just massive, but yeah, it's like way more humble of a place.
One and Jeff, to that, I think he like laid his sword across the warrior's knees. I think this was like you pray to be a knight, essentially, right? Like all night you have to stand here and prove that you can be a knight.
Yeah, it says Jaime had laid his sword across the warrior's knees, piled his armor at its feet, and knelt upon the rough stone floor beneath the altar. When dawn came, his knees were raw and bloody. All knights must bleed, Jaime, Sir Arthur Dane had said when he saw. Blood is the seal of our devotion. With dawn, he tapped him on the shoulder. The pale blade was so sharp that even the light touch cut through Jaime's tunic, so he bled anew. He never felt it. A boy knelt. A knight rose. The young lion, not the Kingslayer. So again, this is back to Jaime's like boyhood idealism of knights and stuff. This is when he's being knighted. This was his last vigil, just before Arthur Dane knighted him.
And the boy was dead.
Yep. So I think it's cool. A cool thing here is when dawn came, his knees were raw and bloody, and then with dawn, he tapped him on the shoulder because dawn is the name of Arthur Dane's sword. So when dawn came, Jaime's knees were raw and bloody, and then with dawn, he tapped him on the shoulder. The pale blade was so sharp that even the light touch had cut through Jaime's tunic, so he bled anew. So I don't know. I just like the dawn
in
the quote. Yep.
Don.
Okay. All right. So Cersei comes dressed as not Cersei, dressed in like a potato sack, basically, right?
Yep.
And this is how she would sneak around back in the day. So it's a little playing on his heartstrings here.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, I remember when I first came to you like this?" And she's like, "Oh, what do you want? Like, what do you want from me?"
You'd only be doing this for one thing.
Exactly. And he's like, "Kevin said no. Can you believe that?" He's like, "And he knew about us." And he's like, "No one knew.
No.
Like everyone suspects now because of Stannis' letter, but no one knew."
Everybody read the letter.
And she's like, "No, Tyrion. He could have been telling everybody. He could have told Tywin. He could have told this new High Septon."
New Septon.
It's like maybe Mace was working with him.
Paranoid.
He's like, Tyrion could be on his way to Highgarden right now. He's like, he's not.
Jaime's not paranoid. Jaime don't give a shit.
But Jaime knows what's going on. Yeah. He's like, he's not on his way to Highgarden.
Jaime would also be like, nope, not my kids. I didn't do it.
Well, he gets there in a second, right? Yeah. So she's like, yeah, we can rule together. Like, you should be hand. So again, she was just talking shit on how bad of a hand Jaime would be to Kevin. And now she's back. You should be hand. I need you. We can be king and queen.
Well, obviously, she's playing everybody she can.
She's running out of people that she can control to name hand.
She just wants a butt in a seat that she can tell what to do. Exactly. He's like, you are Robert's queen, but you won't be mine. He's like, let's be king and queen then. She's like, no, we can't. I fear for our son. He's like, he's not our son. Like, no more than Joffrey was. Like, you made them Robert's children, not mine. And she's like, you promised to always love me. You can't make me beg. And it says, Jaime could smell the fear on her, even through the rank stench of corpse. He wanted to take her in his arms and kiss her, to bury his face in her golden curls and promise her that no one would ever hurt her. Not here, he thought. Not here in front of the gods and father. No, he said, I cannot, will not.
Again.
So I think this is a great point because when he first came back,
he took her
in front of Joffrey and the gods, right, in this spot.
And
I was going to say
without consent. Yeah.
So he capitalizes father is something I wanted to say here.
Should it not have been capitalized?
Not in front of the gods and father.
It's weird, right? Like, so earlier he even says, like, I prayed to father. Was it the god or my dad?
Yeah. Was that capitalized?
I don't remember.
It's right here. This was, he wondered where she was, period, father with a capital. So that one is, but then it was, but was it the god he was invoking, the father above with a capital? Yeah, that one is tricky.
Yeah. He does that sometimes with others normally, but
it seemed kind of on purpose. I will agree. So I just wanted to point it out. We mentioned not catching symbolism earlier. Yeah. This was
for sure
looking good. But he's like, I'm not gonna be your hand. I'm the knight. I'm Knight of the Kingsguard. Sorry,
she's all made for battlefields. She's like, you want battlefields? I'll give you fucking battlefields. I don't really know what that means, but
You want to fight a fucking war? All right.
Well,
That's what it sounded like.
which is interesting because it's kind of the advice he gives her later is like, give Mace a battlefield, like just send him out of here.
Get him doing something else. So
And again, it proves that she's the last one to figure out any actual plans, right? Like,
we'll get to that in a sec. Yeah. So
Tywin's body at this point, crazy decomposition. He's literally oozing.
yeah, next day. Yeah, this is the next day. Dawn came, right?
The rainbows glittering through.
Yep.
And he smells like shit.
the king's hand was rotting visibly. His face had taken on a greenish tinge, and his eyes were deeply sunken, 2 black pits. Fissures had opened in his cheeks, and a foul white fluid was seeping through the joints of his splendid gold and crimson armor to pool beneath his body.
Is this normal? This is my body question.
I mean,
is this
yeah, it
normal for
probably
like
is,
5
right?
days of body?
I mean, like, eventually you're going to pop and your insides are going to come out.
If it's
Like,
hot,
stuff's going
too.
to come
I guess
out of
if
you.
it's hot, like I don't know what the temperature is like, but we're in the south.
Yeah, I'm not
At
going to
one
claim
point,
to know.
at one point, one of the septons came in and like for their devotions and had to be rushed out because he was so faint from the horrible smell. And then they send in people with incense. Like, I don't think this is normal. Like they have to have funerals here relative. Like, were people fainting for Joffrey?
I mean, some of this also was that his bowels were cut open, right?
Yeah, maybe, but I don't know.
We had that discussion last week.
That's what the Silent Sisters and Pycelle have a job to do. Right?
Him seeping ooze is weird to me, but
Again, I don't know.
You're full of ooze, right? Like if I cut you open right now, you'd ooze.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I'm not going to discount it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, fair. So yeah, like I said, the guy got faint. They sent in some people with some incense, and then Jamie's like, it didn't really help.
we get another day of service. Marjorie comes in first. He thinks on like how he likes Marjorie. It's pretty
well. Why? What does Marjorie do that kind of impresses him here?
I don't.
She brings a bouquet of roses and puts them down in front of Tywin.
Oh, and she keeps one in her nose, so she doesn't have
That
to
she
smell.
could sniff.
Holds it like at her chest with the rose right in her nose, so she's got something she's sniffing on it. And he's like, "Oh, she's as clever as she is beautiful." Tom and Set.
Thomas lucky.
This is one where I guess the symbolism kind of was easier for me because it was back to back, but like he's like, oh, look at Marjorie and all her great friends, whereas like Cersei's like, look at Marjorie and all these scheming bitches, and which one can I fucking play, right? Like I was like it just
Jamie's not even trying to play the game really.
He's like, oh, they look like awesome people, yeah.
Jamie's a part of the game and just like wants he is just a piece, right? He's like, I got a job to be a knight. Like he's trying to be a knight, right? He's not trying to be conniving and backstabbing.
And I've mentioned this before that I think as readers it's easy to take the Tyrells as very front-facing and not scheming, kind of like Jamie is. But we should remember what they did was they were trying to steal Sansa, right, away to marry Willis.
Yeah, I just don't think we've had the POV to understand their.
I wasn't
side of
saying
the
they're
game.
not scheming.
I know. I think it's kind of interesting because I think Jamie is a little naive on them, and I think Cersei
I
is
just
a
don't
little
think
bit
Jamie
way
cares.
too.
Jamie doesn't care.
Well, I
about
think I think at this again, what happens in like these medieval times is 2 conflicting families like have marriages and then they're not conflicting anymore. It's not like, hey, we're gonna have this marriage and we're still enemies. Like this should seal the rift. Where Cersei is like, there's no one worse than the Tyrells. Which is like, no, we're mending that. We're making us on the same side.
But I don't even think Jamie cares about the family politics. He's a knight. Like he's worried about standing visual and protecting Tom
but he's smart enough about the Mace stuff at the end, Jeff, is what I want to say about that. Is like, so he is like thinking of this stuff, but I think he just knows that these girls probably aren't the type to be the ones. They're not the problem. It's their parents, right? Like this would be like Sansa doesn't have any fucking clue what's going on in the Game of Thrones yet. Like, but
I think the point here is this marriage is a political thing we're doing to join these houses, and Jamie's thinking like, you know what?
You're trying to drive a wedge.
It could be way well. No, not he's not even thinking about Cersei. He's like, it could be way worse. This is actually a pretty good union. Like this is going to work out pretty well because Marjorie's pretty clever, so they might work well together. While Cersei's just like break them up, not break them up specifically, but like Tyrells and Lannisters are like water and oil. Yeah, so
it's gonna be your daughter. Yeah, that's true.
All right, Cersei comes in with Tom and being escorted by Sir Osmond, which that sets Jamie off down a tailspin.
Oh man, they're banging. Oh god, he's fucking, look at his hair.
Pictures of naked.
Yeah,
he's seen Osmond naked in the showers. He's got coarse black hair, black bush.
He doesn't have the nice hair that Pycelle had.
Not lamb's wool.
Well, then Jamie says she wouldn't do that. He's like, I know what he looks like. Cersei wouldn't sleep with someone like that. And I'm like, that sounds kind of how I would picture Robert naked. Like very coarse black hair all over the place. Like,
why are you picturing Robert naked?
He's obsessed with Robert.
I know. No, I know.
I'm just saying, Jamie's problem with this. He's like, Cersei would never do this. And I'm like, wait, hasn't she already had sex with a very like hairy, like rough black hairy guy?
Yeah,
like,
but that was more for like, I don't know. She didn't choose to have. I think it's more she wouldn't choose to have sex with this guy.
Maybe that's true.
She wouldn't do that to me. Like she obviously had to marry Robert.
Well, I think for us it's interesting because we don't know if she's fucked Osmond. We know she has fucked Lancel. Moon Voice probably is a no. Osmond's like a has she? Does Tyrion know something we don't know?
Probably likely.
I think it's more of like he's just convincing himself is all this is, right? Like he's trying to
convince himself.
Yep.
It's
Well, Tommen can't stay very long because it smells very bad. He bails out of there. Jaime goes after him.
Yaks and his crown falls off his head onto the floor. Again, I thought there was a lot of crown symbolism in the last Cersei chapter, so I just wanted to throw that out there. Again, don't know what it means, but he retches. Crown falls off. I mean,
I knew what it meant. I knew it meant Cersei was fucking pissed because she was pissed in the last one about it, and it didn't even fall off his head, so she had to be fuming.
And it's in front of everybody, too.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I think along with the crown symbolism, when it falls off, Osmond is the one that goes after it, and then Jaime's like, Osmond, relieve me, take my place, and then he goes after Tommen instead. So again, I don't know, but I have no idea what it means.
If there is some symbolism, I'll say, like, just in the mind of Cersei when she's watching all this, like, just embarrassment of the family, like, this is where our family's at right now, like, we lost our strong heir in Joffrey, which is, in her mind, which is crazy. And now we're left with this pudgy little boy who can't even wear his crown.
Yeah.
Like, this is so embarrassing. Like, our dad is rolling over in his stinky wake.
Yeah. So, Tommen runs. I think a bad minus on Cersei, kind of in a passing glance. When Tommen throws up, she's been holding him in place, right? It's like, hey, you have to stay here. You have to look at this guy. Pray. And it says, when Tommen retches, Cersei pulled back in disgust. Like, okay, most people would pull back in disgust when somebody else retches. I would think with the only exception of being maybe your mom, right?
Nobody wants to get puked on.
And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's like an initial like pull back.
Yeah,
but I don't know. Cersei's like all about like, oh, I'm such a loving mother. And like,
someone who's been puked on, pooped on, pissed on, like you have a reaction.
There's a flinch. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Fair. You're the one that would know. So.
Not saying you're not going to clean it up, but someone's got to clean that shit up.
Yeah. Obviously.
Make them live in it.
So I just thought it was a weird line. So, But yeah, Tommen runs. Jaime goes and catches him, but he's caught him like in the sept, and there's still a bunch of septons looking. So he's like, let's go outside. There's no one looking. So he takes him outside. There's some guards there, but he pulls him to the side.
Fucking poor Tommen, right? The first thing he says is, I'm sorry, I'll do better tomorrow. Like, this poor kid is fucking abused as shit, Nelson.
Oh, it's bad. Yeah.
And like, he's like crying. First off, the smell in there sounds awful, right? Like, we just got through the whole oozing part of this conversation. And then, like, I mean, he's like, he should be allowed to cry at his grandfather's funeral. Like,
not as a Lannister.
Yeah, that was the problem last time. Yeah.
I understand.
Yep. But
and then to enough that literally the first thing he says to anybody is like, I'm so sorry. Like, obviously he's fucking abused.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
And maybe worried that Jaime was mad at him too.
Yeah. And Jaime's like, dude.
And Jaime's like, no, it's cool.
Like, dude, relax. And he's like, but how can you stand the smell?
Yeah.
Well, you see, my hand was chopped off.
And I had to wear it as a necklace, so that smelled pretty bad. And then also I smelled a guy being roasted alive in his own armor one time. So
that didn't smell great. Burnt hair is awful. It's an awful smell.
And he says, the world is full of horrors, Tommen. You can fight them or laugh at them or look without seeing. Go away inside. So I think this is really interesting. But even before we get to what Tommen replies with, I think this itself is interesting because I think it kind of just tells you how Jaime deals with everything.
Speaks to how you dealt with Tywin growing up. Is just
everything.
Turned it off.
Well, and even killing Ares and all that stuff, and being at these two things that he was talking about here, the get his hand cut off and the roasting. But like, yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, so he wasn't enjoying this at the very least, right? At least that's what he's kind of insinuating here.
Yeah.
He's exactly. Like, I was doing what needed to be done. I wasn't enjoying it. It wasn't for me. That's how I interpret that.
Yeah. Well, so what does Tommen say next?
Well, then he says, I used to do that when Joffrey
used to ... and then Cersei cuts him off.
Well, he said when Joffrey, and then Joffrey is what Cersei.
You say his name. You say my son's name.
So what did Joffrey used to do to Tywin?
Tommen.
Yeah, your names today, man. You're like a first time reader here. You said what did Joffrey used to do?
Kyle.
I mean, he probably did some awful stuff, right? Like when Joffrey beat the hell out of me, when I had to watch Joffrey fucking kill and skin all the cats, when I had to fucking Joffrey was threaten me with his three-shot crossbow. I don't know, man. I feel like Joffrey probably did all sorts of awful things to his little
I think
brother.
those are all good things. I don't know if Nelson's trying to insinuate that he was like diddling him or not.
No, I don't have anything specific. I just think like the quote implies that he was doing something bad.
We knew he would do awful things.
Obviously,
I think what Kyle's saying, like killing a cat in front of him, is probably like Tomon's what, 6 years old, like. That'd be pretty terrifying to watch, like a bunny get slayed by your brother, and like in front of you. True. Like, watch this thing.
Yeah, wringing its neck.
That's
or
pretty
some
terrifying.
Bullshit. Yeah, exactly.
I think I'd be kind of freaked out by it.
Yeah, so he had to go somewhere else. While whenever Joffrey did whatever Joffrey did, I think it's vague on purpose. In the same time here, Nelson, because it's like he did such probably broadly sweeping awful things to Tommen, because he did awful things to everybody.
Okay, what can I do to you today, Tommen? I'll make your day awful.
He definitely picked on him.
Gotcha. Cool. Then Cersei
comes out.
Cersei's out, and then Mace shortly after, right? But does Cersei say anything here?
Yeah, she fucking is like, everybody else in there could smell how shitty it was, and they weren't throwing up everywhere. And it's like, well, they're also not 8-year-old boys and whatever, right? Like, and it's not their grandfather.
And Marjorie had the rose thing.
Yeah. Did you see Marjorie bawling like a baby?
Yeah. So Mace comes out. He kind of leads everybody out of the service, and Jaime calls him over and invites him to a dinner, talk about some things. So she's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And here is Jaime playing the game.
Or she's pissed. She's like, and at first, like when you read this, Kyle, I was wondering, like, did you think Jaime was just trolling Cersei because they kind of been butting heads? Do you think he was just trying to like sign her up for a dinner that he knew she would hate?
The worst dinner possible.
It did kind of feel like that, where it was like, have fun later, lady.
Because on a reread, I almost thought that. I kind of forgot what his actual plan here was.
Yeah, so what is his plan? Just wrap it up.
Yeah, so the real plan is to send him away to siege, what was it? I can't think of the name. It's not Storm's End. Storm's End.
Mace has experience with this. This was pretty much his only job during Robert's Rebellion, as he stormed Storm's End.
Yeah,
he showed up late and took one of Randall Tarley's victories, and then he got the Storm's End and then just sat there and ate food while ate boots.
Was he eating rats? And
shit?
Yeah. And then onions.
And then onions when the boy showed up. Exactly.
Yep. And Cersei's like, "Oh shit, you had a plan. Like you're thinking."
Well, first there's a problem with the plan. Mace won't go anywhere until the marriage happens. He's like, let it happen. He's like, he's too young. Tom is too young to diddle. He's like,
take plenty of time.
It'll be years so they can consummate. Before that, and until then, we can set it aside.
They can marry. Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. Whatever happens, happens.
I think this is interesting because do we know any other marriages that are unconsummated?
Well, we don't know if it's Tyrion and yeah. But also, what's the other two? Not the Blackfish.
Edmure.
Yeah, that was the word I was looking for. Yeah, and we don't know the status of that one, right?
It's true.
It was. They were going to the betting.
Yeah. So we just don't know the status. Is all I was saying. So who knows? Yeah, I mean, we have some precedent here, at least from pretty highly important or close to like a potential hand candidate here.
Yep. So Jaime says that sending Mace away is a win-win. Why? What are the two wins?
I mean, either for one, he's gone, right?
Well, that's a win no matter what. Yep.
Yeah.
Win,
exactly.
Win.
And then he could die.
Win.
He could die as one of them.
He could die.
Sure.
He could die / fuck it up. Just make a fool of himself. That's one. Or he could succeed, and then we get Storm's End. So like there's no bad
win.
Win. Exactly. And she's like, you know what? For a moment, you sounded quite like father. End of scene.
And Jaime puffs his chest as they walk off stage. Kyle, thoughts? Jaime, long ass chapter.
I mean, this was one I tried to fill the pod with my thoughts. I think.
Yeah, I think we got two out for the most part.
Jaime in the future playing. So I feel like at the end, Jaime's kind of playing hand, like second hand right? to Cersei. Like, does he continue to play?
Does he go? Well, I lost one hand, so I need another. If he fucking says that, I'm gonna be mad. All right, I'm gonna say that right now.
It just seems
if he uses a missing hand as a reason to take the handship, I'm gonna be mad.
Well, my question was: is he gonna try to be hand behind the scenes more so than like let someone else be the hand? But he's in Cersei's ear, giving the counsel.
I don't think he does that. No, he doesn't seem. To me, he still doesn't seem like that. Like he doesn't want that role.
I think what's very clear is Cersei needs somebody because like Kevin just gave her some really good advice. Jaime here has given her some really good advice. She seems to not be able to come up with anything on herself. She needs to get somebody in here that's going to keep giving her good advice. And if it's not going to be Kevin or Jaime, we need somebody. Who else is it going to be, right? So that's another interesting question. Who could the hand be?
So you start thinking. But all right, well, let's wrap it up. We've been going a while. Yeah.
We'll see Kyle in the next one. Kyle, did you see who it is?
Brienne of Tarth.
Brienne 2.
Brienne 2.
Right on the heels of Sansa. Be there any day now.
What do you mean right on the heels of Sansa?
She's tracking her down.
Oh, yeah. That's what her job is.
She has no idea where Sansa is. Yeah.
I know. Well, I thought you were talking because this chapter was right on the heels of the Cersei chapter. I thought you were trying to say like there's going to be a Sansa one next or something. But anyway, cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Should be good.
Yeah, we'll see Kyle now. We'll see the rest of you guys in the spoiler section for Jaime 1. Bye, Kyle.
We'll see you.
Later, nerds.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Bye, Kyle.
Bye, Kyle. Thanks for hanging out with us. See you on the next one for Brienne 2.
Now, on a spoiler section. Jeff, I want to say something quick. Most of it will probably get edited out, but in the non-spoiler section, there was a part where I was looking for, while we were having our conversation, I was looking for something. I think it's when Jaime tells Tommen to go away inside. And right now, what I'm saying, I wish I would have said the non-spoiler because I found out that it's actually, I knew this quote happened. I just couldn't remember if it was already or not yet.
Jaime tells Tommen to go wait inside?
No. When he's like, hey, when horrible things happen, you can either fight them, laugh at them, or go away inside.
Okay. What's the quote you were finding?
So the quote I was thinking of that I thought reminded me of that was when Catelyn questions Jaime right before she releases him, the end of Clash of Kings. And the quote is, I stood at the foot of the Iron Throne in my white armor. And Jaime's talking about when Aerys killed Rickard, Ned's dad. I stood at the foot of the Iron Throne in my white armor and white cloak, filling my head with thoughts of Cersei. After, Gerald Hightower himself took me aside and said to me, you swore a vow to guard the king, not to judge him. That was the White Bull, loyal to the end, and a better man than me, all agree. So that gave me a thought of like, that's what Jaime used to do. Is like when Aerys would do fucked up shit.
Going away in his mind.
He would just go away in his mind and think of Cersei. Again, it's weird that he thinks of Cersei because they're sisters, but like the idea of just like, block out the bad things isn't horrible.
I've accepted that Jaime was in love with Cersei. So,
but like, what's weird is I feel like people have questioned, like especially in this chapter when he's talking to Rhaegar, and Rhaegar says, "My father's more afraid of your father like about Tywin than he is of Robert, and he thinks that keeping you close will save him."
Yeah,
and people are like, "Wow, that's funny because if he would have kept Barristan,
he probably
he'd probably be alive." But I'm like, is that true? If Barristan knew what Jaime knew, would he not have done the same thing?
Well, Barristan wasn't going to be able to take on the army. You're saying if the Mad King was just like, all right, cool, let's blow this thing up.
We're gonna burn everybody. Would these Kingsguard have done that? And when I read this chapter, the one that we just did the podcast on, Jaime 1, Feast of Crows, I was like, Jaime's crazy. Barristan, any honorable knight, Arthur Dane, Gerald Hightower, Barristan
would have stopped the burning of the city.
But here, this quote that I just read from the Catelyn chapter, Gerald Hightower
saying just
is criticizing Jaime for judging Aerys in that moment. So that makes me think those guys would have been like, the king is right no matter what.
Nah, I think there's a line. I think burning everybody is a step above burning one or killing one.
Yeah, but slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope for sure. I'm going to say if there's 7 of them, that 3 of them might have been completely okay with it. I'm going to say it's pretty 50-50. Flip of the coin.
Yeah, who knows? It's hard to tell. I don't think we know. Just interesting to think about.
Was Aerys' plan also just to burn with them? He's like, all right, fuck it. I'm going up in flames too.
Yeah. Jaime, I think, tells Brienne that he thought he would become a dragon. We never get a quote of Aerys saying anything like that, but I think that's what Jaime says to Brienne. I think Jaime says, I think he thought he wasn't going to die, that he would be born again.
He wouldn't die. Yeah, he's crazy.
But I think Jaime even says, I think that Aerys thought that. So Jaime didn't have any proof of that. It was a thought that Jaime had.
I also think that Hightower would have been okay with Jaime taking his mind elsewhere too, because that's kind of like how you don't judge him, right? Is when you're
that quote is him after Jaime took his mind elsewhere. Hightower saying, "Don't judge the king, just obey him." That was Gerald criticizing Jaime after doing that.
Yeah, but when was Jaime judging him is my question. If he's not even paying attention, he's thinking about Cersei, when was he judging him?
Well, I think Gerald could tell that he wasn't present. He was like...
But why is not being present judging him?
Because if somebody ran in that moment to attack the king, is Jaime ready if he's in his mind thinking about Cersei?
But that's still not judging the king. That doesn't mean you're judging. Being distracted doesn't mean you're judging.
You might be right, but that quote I just read, which is what Jaime says to Catelyn, makes it seem that he takes it that way. That Gerald judged him for that.
Yeah, but it also seems like it's lacking context. Like Jaime goes into the White Tower, like, oh my God, can you believe our king just did that?
Agreed. And to be fair, it's a Catelyn chapter, not a Jaime chapter. So there's a lot of times where Jaime will say something dickish, but think something a little more sensible to himself. So who knows? Maybe there's some thoughts that we're missing here. But the quote is, I went away inside and thought about Cersei, and Gerald basically said, don't fucking judge the king. You do whatever the fuck he says no matter what.
I just don't see it completely lining up.
I agree. I think that's kind of why it's interesting. So, yep, that's all I had about that one. Just something that I was thinking about in the non-spoiler. So now into the normal, what we do. What, you have anything?
Well, there's the Dawn reference. I think you were kind of hinting at the Dawn. Weirdly to Kyle, where Kyle doesn't understand it at all.
I think I was hinting at the fact that the word Dawn was brought up twice, which I do think is interesting, and both were like with Jaime bleeding. There's a third one. Dawn caught Jaime almost unawares. This is those Dawn quotes were back when Jaime was thinking about him and Rhaegar the day he was knighted. So in a paragraph where Jaime thinks about getting knighted, Dawn is mentioned twice. Once actually the sword, and then Dawn in the actual chapter when it comes. It says Dawn caught Jaime unawares, period. Like that's the sentence in of itself.
Now Jaime's Nisa.
Jon later has Dawn, and he just like kills Jaime without even... Jaime doesn't even see him coming. Dawn took Jaime unawares.
Bam, we just solved it.
There you go. Yeah, Dawn stuff, again, it's one of the things I don't really have any specific thoughts on, but again, Dawn
it's
just
been
definitely
mentioned.
perks my eyes up. There was a suite that perked my eyes up as well. Glow reference.
There's some sweet sisters.
After the Septons come in swinging the censers in the room fills with incense, Jaime thinks it's like a sweet, rotten smell. Well, at one point, Cersei says, do you think he smelled any sweeter to me? I have a nose too. Talking to
Tom.
To Tom and about Tywin.
Yeah. To be sure, his sweet sister seemed to think half the court was either useless or treasonous. Cause I just pulled that one up.
Sweet
That's another
sister.
sweet.
Yeah. Shortly after a flock of novices came in swinging censers, and the air grew so thick with incense that the beer seemed cloaked in smoke. All the rainbows vanished and that perfume mist. Yet the stench persisted. A sweet, rotten smell that made Jaime want to gag. Sweet, rotten smell. So that kind of just made me think of Glow, because that's kind of his whole point, is that anytime we hear sweet, anytime it's
actually
rotten.
sweet, it's a bad.
And that's exactly what this
is.
It's
covering up.
One of the Septons came in, fainted because it was so stinky, and they sent in novices with incense to cover the rottenness, right? And James like, it didn't work.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about Rugen.
I thought this was interesting. Kyle didn't think really much about it.
Yeah. It actually thinks Rugen's an actual person that Jaime just knows from the job.
Well, I mean, that's fair because there's not really a hint that Rugen is another person.
For sure. Yeah.
Like for me and you, it obviously sticks out that Jaime says, I know who Rugen is.
You probably told me the first time Rugen was brought up, like, oh, it's Varys. Like,
well, I think at this point it's actually funny because if Kyle, I was ready. If Kyle said, I think I know who Rugen is, because I thought it was going to be kind of obvious for him. If you go back and look at the first time Arya sees Illyrio and Varys walking together, and then what Varys is dressed in when he comes to see Ned the first time in the cells.
200 chapters since then.
I know, but like it all matches up. So I think like if Kyle would have
it's
finally
been
got
matched
it here,
up, but it's 80 chapters in between.
Yeah, but I was excited because I thought this was going to be one of the episodes where I get to go reveal a bunch of stuff that Kyle now it all makes sense. But he's like, yeah, Rugen, it makes sense that he knew him because Jaime was here longer. And I'm like, yeah, that actually does make sense now that you say that. I didn't think about it, but okay, I guess we're just going to keep pretending Rugen's a different person.
I mean, I don't even remember word for word what Rugen's description was. So to like expect
it's very unlike Varys. It's like shave it. Oh, you mean with Ned and Arya and
to be able to piece it together from Arya to Ned to this last time we hear of Rugen's description to be like to have that light bulb moment. I think is I don't think it's going to happen based off of the description from Arya 12 of a Game of Thrones.
Yep, cool. Anything else?
Yeah, there was one thing. Let me just comb through my notes real quick because it was something that the Hightower deal. Anything you want to talk about? Just like the Hightowers, they killed him and the sons, but the line still lived. Maybe you can't tell me that because
I don't know what you're talking about. The Hightowers.
The Hightower, Quentin Hightower, got killed after the plague, and they killed his sons. Did that stop the Hightower line?
No, he must have had a son. I don't think we know much about it. This was 80 years ago. I don't think, at least I don't, off the top of my head, know the exact lineage. But yeah, he must have probably just had a son who carried on.
Oh, damn. What did I have?
What about the Jaime and Rhaegar stuff? Their talk before the Trident.
Yeah, so I actually thought Kyle's idea of like dropping the incest was a really interesting idea.
I don't think that's what it was. I think the idea is he's going to take the place of Aerys. We're going to get all the lords together and be like, hey,
he's not fit. Let me take over. I think that's probably makes the most sense. I don't know why it's like so common knowledge between Rhaegar and Jaime that like they've been like whispering about this, like, yeah, don't worry, I'll make this change.
Well, I think he even says I should have done it long ago, but there's no point to talk about paths not taken or something like that. But I think what he's referencing is the tourney at Harrenhal. Aerys hadn't left the castle since the Defiance of Duskendale, right? Aerys had been kidnapped and held at Duskendale. Barristan saves him. Aerys at that point gets super paranoid. That's kind of when he starts going mad for the most part. And he refuses to leave King's Landing. He refuses to let anyone in his presence with a sword nearby. So he's locked up going crazy. Rhaegar basically is like, hey, all the lords, literally all the lords, North, South, Dorne, everybody, we're going to have this big tourney at Harrenhal. And the idea is Rhaegar was really trying to get all the lords together to be like, hey, I know you all hate my dad. Let's try and have like a little peaceful transition of power to me. But Aerys shows up. He's like, I'm going to that tourney. And people think he was suspicious of what was happening. So that's why he goes to the tourney. That's the tourney at Harrenhal. So when Rhaegar says, I meant to do it long ago, he's saying I meant to do this at the tourney if the tourney at Harrenhal would have been successful. So I think that's what most of the fans think is happening here. Is just like, hey, we're going to overthrow Aerys in a more peaceful way.
Bad son.
The smell, Tywin stinky. And just super stinky.
Yeah, I mean, he was poisoned.
He was super poisoned.
This isn't normal.
I don't know if he does. I don't know if the smile has anything to do with him being poisoned, but poison to me.
It's happening too fast. I just can't imagine.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think this is probably more likely day 2 or 3 than it is 5 or 6.
I mean, you just look at a deer on a road, right? Deer gets hit by a car, and it like takes a week probably for it to just like blow up with the internal gas. I don't know.
Right? It happens kind of quick, but again, this is treated by Pycelle and Silent Sisters who know how to do this. It's what they do.
They know how to do it.
It's all the Silent Sisters do.
This doesn't happen to every visual that's lasted 7 days. Like when they do this, like they're not oozing on the stand with smell, right? They've been able to stay at the wake on the 7th day of the service and not need a flower to cover their nose for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's, again, I don't know what else the smell would be hinting at except for just that Tywin himself is just kind of a spoiled, rotten person. We all know that. I was kind of playing on the pro Tywin side a little bit in the non-spoiler, but yeah, Tywin sucks. I mean, he's a cool character, but as a person, he sucks.
Yeah. I thought maybe it was just a Rugen thing that I won. There was something that like I was looking at my notes, and when we started talking with Kyle, it like, oh, that's something for the spoiler, but I can't think of it now.
So the last one I had was with Rugen stuff, and it's when he's talking about how many people they're paying for. They're paying for 20 turnkeys, 6 gold, or all this, and I'm like, are they really paying or what? Like, and this isn't clear. And I think Jaime later does some more investigating and finds out more weird stuff going on with like somehow how this money's being spent.
There is one thing too that like the only people that would have known about it were the Master of Coin and the Master of Whispers, right? So that's
who was the Master of Coin for most of the time
was Littlefinger.
Yes, at least while Rugen was here, which is during Robert's reign. Littlefinger, exactly.
So Littlefinger's paying Rugen, like he would know it's Varys, right? Like,
well, we've already talked about this a little bit. There's this. One of the big fan theories is Littlefinger has this debt scheme where he's purposely getting the crown in debt, then he's buying up all the debt later, basically so that the crown has to default on its loans, and then Littlefinger will be in a better position, and then that's not going to be good for the crown.
So the crown defaults on its loans, and then just says like, all right, you can have this castle. Like, well, how is he expecting to get paid back?
It's not just the crown, right? So the Iron Bank loans money to everybody, the crown, but also all these lords and lesser lords. So when the Iron Bank's like, okay, your yearly payments due, and Cersei's like, go fuck yourself, we don't have it. Then the Iron Bank needs to start calling in other loans from the littler lords to make up what the crown's not paying. And it's not that it
doesn't make too much sense, because wouldn't the Iron Bank want every loan to be paid?
Exactly. They're not paying for the crown's debt. It's just
they're paying their own debt. But like, wouldn't the Iron Bank want that debt too?
Exactly.
Like,
but I think the idea is on like a yearly basis, they want to keep they're just not taking nothing for a year. So if the biggest one isn't paying, everyone else is interest rates that year or whatever are going up a little bit.
Okay. So they're changing the rates on people.
Exactly. So everyone wants to basically get out of their Iron Bank loans because they're getting really, really bad. So Littlefinger's there, and he's been so they're only paying half the heads here. Where's all the other money going? Probably straight to Littlefinger's
pocket.
Exactly. Yeah. And on the books there are 20 people or whatever, right? And that's kind of what Tyrion said.
Littlefinger 1 to 12.
And that's what Tyrion's saying is like the books were just so messy I couldn't even keep track of where the money was going. He just keeps all the money moving. So I bet you he's a good investor, but also there's some embezzling going on where he's just taking money from the crown, sure, but also getting the crown in debt at the same time. So what we see I think in one of the next, it might even be the next one of the next Sansa chapters. I think they're at the gates of the moon. Maybe it's the Winds of Winter chapter. Yeah, maybe it's the end of Dance of Dragons or Feast of Crows. But basically, when Sansa comes down the mountain, she meets with Littlefinger. I think it's in the books, and the Mad Mouse. Well, Littlefinger's there with a few lords, and basically the idea is, I think we learn that he's been buying up all this debt, right? So, Waynwood, one of the houses in the Vale, had a lot of debt. They were in money problems, so they had a loan from the Iron Bank. Littlefinger gave them enough money to pay off their Iron Bank loan, but now they're basically in Littlefinger's pocket, right? He's not being like, pay me back. But if they don't, then like if they're not as friendly to him, then he might start doing that. Exactly. So he starts doing this to all the Vale lords, and the idea is the reason he's able to buy up all this debt is because of that. And he also starts doing things where
he's just been stealing money.
And kind of what Tyrion, at one point when Tyrion's looking through his books, he's like, Littlefinger would buy grain when it was cheap and he would sell bread when it was scarce. And that's exactly what we see him doing in the Vale. He's hoarding food because he knows this is going to be a shitty winter. Well, people aren't going to have food because this war just popped off. And as soon as winter kicks and nobody has food, I'm going to be the only one with food, and they're all going to have to come running to me.
They're going to have to buy it from me. Supply and demand. It's just economics 101.
Exactly. I just think it's kind of interesting that there's a few mentions at this point already that like Littlefinger has been doing things to put the crown financially in a bad financial situation, so he will later. Like how many? I mean, I don't read it. Me and you are both not huge readers, but I feel like it's not a huge thing where like financial manipulation like this is a plot in fiction. I don't know. I can't think of another example.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe some mob stuff. He's kind of a mobster the way he does things like that, right?
Yeah, he's cooking the books for sure. Yeah, I don't know.
That was the last one I had. Littlefinger debt scheme, stealing money.
Kyle thinking that I just came to mind. Kyle thinking Marjorie not playing the game is pretty interesting.
I think it's very easy to think that Tyrells aren't scheming because we're not in any of their heads.
But not even just the Tyrells. Like, just he thinks like Marjorie is like a clean cut gal, and she's pretty well versed in the game.
Well, again, I think you're letting the show slip in. We don't know.
No. She was playing the game last week with Tommen.
That's true.
Last Cersei chapter.
She seems to be very under the wing of Olenna, so you have to assume she's learning something. Yeah, that's fair. But again, I think you need to not let the show Marjorie cloud your judgment. That show Marjorie is way more in tune with how the world works.
We haven't
using
really
her sexuality and stuff. It's true. We haven't seen it from her point of view.
That's true. I'm saying we just haven't seen this Marjorie a whole lot other than like her playing around with like her girlfriends, right? Like that's
true. Yep.
So,
and we'll see more of her through the rest of the Cersei chapters. Oh, I guess the last thing to mention, Kyle didn't really say anything about it. Cersei says, "I'll give you battlefields." I think Jaime's out.
Yeah.
She's gonna be like, "Go."
But then he's back in. He's back in at the end of the chapter.
What do you mean? I'm saying at the end of this, I think next Jaime chapter, she's like, "Go fuck off. You're out of King's Landing." Next Jaime chapter.
She actually does send him away.
She sends him to Riverrun to win that
siege.
Basically, just go clean up the Riverlands.
I'm saying he was out of favor when she said that, and then after this Mace conversation, he's kind of back into favor.
Yeah, because he gives her good advice. Yeah, but she does still send him off to clean up the Riverlands.
Well, someone's got to go, and she wants to. Maybe she likes Osmond a little bit more now.
Well, and then we won't have Jaime in King's Landing to give like the reasonable take for all of Cersei's crazy takes. It'll just be Cersei's crazy take. So that'll be fun. See you guys in the future for that one. See you guys next time for Brienne 2. Like, subscribe. See you in the next one.